Hi everyone, I'm Maggie McGrath with Forbes Breaking News. Fierce winds have fueled multiple wildfires in Los Angeles, and tens of thousands of people are under emergency evacuation order. Joining us now to discuss these fires is AccuWeather Meteorologist Alex DaSilva. Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's start with an overview. There is not just one, not just two, but 3 fires in the Los Angeles area. Where are they exactly?
Yeah, we're dealing with a very dangerous situation right now. This is a fast-moving, wind-driven inferno that we're dealing with right now across Southern California. 3 fires, like you mentioned, the Palisades fire, the Eaton fire, and the Hearst fire, all just north and northeast of LA itself, are burning in the hills here right now, and they've seen explosive growth here over the last day. These fires actually started yesterday, and they have just exploded here over the last 24 or so hours here, driven by these exceptionally strong Santa Ana winds.
Let's talk about those winds. You call them strong. How fast are these winds moving, and how out of the ordinary are these speeds?
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the winds that are just about currently happening right now. These are the future wind gusts for about right now. You can see what we're forecasting right now. Winds 30, 40 miles per hour. Look, downtown Los Angeles, 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts. That's pretty strong for them. You know, in the hills, they are much, much stronger. And if we take a look at what some of the reports we've seen so far, look at this. Winds almost 100 miles per hour. We've even seen some wind gusts around 100, even exceeding 100 a little bit, miles per hour. You can see this is exceptionally, exceptionally strong. And in some of these areas, they are not accustomed to seeing these types of winds. We see Santa Ana wind events every single year, but most of the time those winds are confined to the canyons and up in the mountains. This event is very, very different, as we're seeing those winds come down out of the mountains, out of the canyons, and down into downtown Los Angeles right now. And so that is why we are very concerned. If we take a look at kind of our map showing the LA area and where these winds are located, you can see anywhere in this lighter pink color, 30 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts through the day today. And then in the darker purple area, Ventura, Los Angeles, down to Riverside, these are the winds that we're really concerned about, 50 to 70 miles per hour in these areas. And again, very unusual to get these all the way down to the coast. A lot of times they're confined to the mountainous areas or the little canyons that are located in here, but to see them come all the way into the cities is very, very unusual.
What is causing this unusual activity? Do we know?
Yeah, so it's a very unusual setup here, or the magnitude is much stronger than what is normal. So it's a Santa Ana wind event. So what typically happens in a Santa Ana wind event is you get a big area of high pressure diving down into what we call the Great Basin. So that's kind of the Nevada, Utah area. And there's counterclockwise or clockwise spin that essentially spins around that area of high pressure. So it's moving like that. Now, to the south of the border here, across Baja California, we have a very strong area of low pressure, unusually strong. And the winds around this area of low pressure spin counterclockwise. And so you can see how you're getting this funneling around these 2 different areas, these 2 different weather systems, the high to the north, the low to the south. And again, these 2 areas are much stronger than what is typical. And so that's why you're kind of getting this amplified. Again, we see multiple Santa Ana wind events in a given year. They typically happen in the fall and winter months. But this one is much, much stronger. The high and the low, and what we call the gradient between them, is much, much stronger than average, and is basically historical, and is causing a historical event here in Southern California. These winds get funneled and they go into the mountains, into the canyons, and they come right out. And then they come right out and they help to fuel some of these fires that got ignited. And that's what is causing this very dangerous, fast-moving inferno.
So a historic wind event. Let's go back to that map of where the fires are. I don't think officials have yet disclosed or revealed the cause of the fires, but we effectively have a situation where the wind is exacerbating these wildfires. Hundreds and hundreds of buildings have been damaged and destroyed, and we don't yet know the final toll. But how fast are the fires moving, and what areas are under evacuation right now? And I'll stop my questions there for now. How fast is it moving, and what areas are under evacuation?
Yeah, well, the winds are essentially coming out of the north or northeast. So the winds are basically coming out of this direction here. And so this kind of brownish color you see here is essentially the smoke coming off of these fires here. So you can see the winds essentially coming down and pushing some of this smoke down. But the fires, they don't move as fast as the wind speeds. But what happens is the fires produce embers, right? And the embers get transported by the wind. So sometimes the winds push those embers, even miles sometimes ahead of the main parent fire. So you can get, kind of almost like little precursor fires to develop well ahead of that main parent fire. And so that's kind of the concern. And when we see wildfires with lots of smoke, that's what happens is those embers get transported up in the air and they get thrown sometimes miles ahead of that storm. And so that can cause a very dangerous situation. And sometimes people can get caught off guard by how far ahead sometimes some of these fires ignite ahead of it. But yeah, in terms of the wind speed, yeah, we're seeing these fires get pushed very, very quickly. There's been a lot of videos showing that, how fast these fires move, and they can move, very quickly and can catch people off guard.
Now, Palisades is just north of Santa Monica, and it looks like the Hearst fire is a little further inland. Is there a risk of these individual fires merging?
It's hard to say. Once you get, like I kind of just mentioned, you kind of get those embers to kind of fly ahead of the main parent fire. It's possible that some of them can ignite new fires nearby and they can kind of merge into one. But overall, these three fires are separated at the current moment. They're not right on top of one another, but it is possible that some of them could overlap with some areas that were already impacted, right? So you have the Palisades fire that's, down in, closer to the coast, and then you have the Hearst fire that's kind of behind it. So it's possible that if the Hearst fire continues to advance, it could potentially impact some of those areas that were already impacted by the Palisades fire.
Now, there are areas of Los Angeles County that are under mandatory evacuation, and then there are others that are under suggested evacuation. Based on what you see with the wind patterns, where would you evacuate even if you're not under mandatory order?
Well, certainly anywhere downstream of where the winds are going, right? So the winds essentially are coming out of the north or northeast. So that's going to be pushing those fires in that direction. Anywhere kind of north of the Hearst fire and the Eaton fire, they're not really seeing the threat of the fire, because right now the winds are shoving that fire essentially to the south right now, or southeast or southwest. So it's everywhere that's kind of in front of where that fire is moving. That's the area that I'm most concerned about. And those are the areas that are under evacuation orders right now. And certainly we absolutely urge people, if they are under an evacuation order by your local officials, please evacuate, because we have seen these fires move exceptionally fast over the last 24 hours, and it gives you very little time to evacuate. And we don't want people getting stuck, because remember, those embers can blow ahead of the fire. So if you are evacuating ahead of the main parent fire and some of those embers ignite a new fire downstream, you could become trapped. And that's what we're seeing. That's the real danger here, is it's not just those three main fires. There are new fires being started because the embers are being blown essentially downstream, and that could potentially trap people. So please listen to your local emergency management officials and leave if told to do so.
It's an incredibly dangerous situation, and it's hard to predict. But in terms of the winds, what is your projection for when those winds might slow down or even stop?
Yeah, I mean, there is some good news here that it looks like the winds this afternoon are going to begin to taper off a little bit. They're not going to go away completely, but they are going to back down. Right now, the morning hours, this is kind of the morning into the early afternoon is kind of the strongest winds that we're going to be dealing with across this area. Again, that's when we've seen a lot of these really big wind speeds that we've seen over hurricane force, in fact, in some of these areas. So, I mean, just imagine, some of these firefighters out there that are battling these blazes. I mean, you're essentially battling it within a hurricane almost, because those wind speeds, some of these gusts have exceeded hurricane strength. And so, but the good news is, as we get later into the afternoon and evening, the winds will begin to back off a little bit. They're not going to go away. The threat of this fire moving quickly is going to continue into the overnight hours. However, it does look like the winds are going to back off from their peak as we move throughout the evening. Here's Pacific Palisades, the wind off of the AccuWeather app. again, if you go to AccuWeather.com and look up a location, you can see the winds as you move into the future. So we're taking Pacific Palisades here, and look in these areas here. These are the wind gusts and wind speeds down in this area here. So this is in Eastern time right here, the winds, the time. So you have 4 p.m. Eastern time. You can see gusting around 36 miles per hour in Pacific Palisades. And then going forward from there, by the time we get to 9 p.m. Eastern time, now we're at 25 miles per hour. So about a 10 mile per hour reduction between 4 and 9 p.m. Again, the winds are not going to completely go away, but they are going to be off of their peak, which is probably going on, late morning into the early afternoon.
And hopefully that will help the firefighting efforts. We can only hope, I suppose. Or what do we know how much the reduction in wind speed could help emergency personnel contain these fires?
I mean, it's going to help a little bit, but the winds are going to be strong, and so they're still going to be breezy throughout the overnight and even into tomorrow. So I think, unfortunately, these fires may continue to advance throughout the afternoon and into the overnight hours. The speed at which they advance, some of those embers may not be traveling as far out ahead of the main parent fire, so that could help firefighters get a little bit of a better handle on some of these fires. But the threat is not going to go away. These fires look like they're going to be continuing to advance, albeit maybe not at the same pace as they are currently or earlier this morning.
And Alex, as we talk about the conditions that allowed these fires to occur, I want to ask you, LA and the broader LA County did receive a decent amount of rain over the summer. Did it not? And if so, why were things so dry that this could happen so quickly?
Yeah, if we think back to kind of last winter and even last spring, there was a great deal of rain, in Southern California, even over the last couple of years. In fact, a lot of the drought was essentially eliminated. Now, overall, that's a good thing. But what can happen when you get a lot of rain across Southern California is you get a lot of greening. So what happens is during the winter time, last winter and into the spring, we got so much rain that it caused kind of a bloom in a lot of the vegetation. So we had new bushes, new trees, new grass, new vegetation really begin to bloom during the spring and summer months. And then what happens is as we got into the fall, things kind of dried out, as they normally do. But what happens is because we had all that growth, all that greening, that just caused a lot more fuel. And all that fuel essentially dried out, and then the fires ignited, and then they had a lot more fuel to work with. So sometimes we look at rain as a good thing, and most of the time it is a good thing. But sometimes what can happen is you can get an explosiveness of greening and growth, and then if you get a really dry fall and into the early winter months, you could potentially be at risk of seeing these kind of explosive fires develop. And unfortunately, that's what we've seen.
Alex DaSilva, AccuWeather Meteorologist, thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate your time and insight as always.
Thank you for having me.